Recording 3, the photograph. That's the work tonight. I ended the last session with an observation I need to follow up. A mark on the photograph's surface, visible only at a low angle under direct light, at the lower left of the image. I noted it and stopped because the tape was the session's objective and I didn't want to split focus. Tonight, the photograph is the focus. I want to understand what that mark is, whether there are others, and what the photograph actually shows when I look at it carefully, instead of treating it as a secondary item. This is the object, 4 by 6 inches, black and white print, showing the facade of 47 Marginal Road. On the back, pencil inscription, 47 Marginal Road. No date, no photographer's mark, no other writing. That's the inventory I made in session 1. Tonight, I'm going deeper. The building in the photograph. I've been treating this image as context, as confirmation that 47 Marginal Road is a real place rather than an address someone invented. But the photograph itself is evidence, and I haven't examined it as carefully as I should. The building appears to be brick, 3 stories, possibly 4. The upper edge of the image cuts off before the roofline is fully visible. The ground floor has 2 large windows flanking a central entrance. The entrance is closed, a double door, no detail visible at this resolution. The second floor windows are regularly spaced, 6 across the facade. The third floor windows are smaller, narrower. At the right edge of the image, the building ends, and there's a narrow gap before what might be an adjacent structure, also cut off by the frame. The street in front is empty. No vehicles, no people, no shadow on the ground that would indicate the time of day. The image could have been taken in the morning, afternoon, or an overcast midday. There's no directional shadow I can use to orient it. The lit window. On second floor, third from the left. In the last session, I noted it appeared lit or reflected differently from the others. Under the lamp tonight with a magnifying glass, it's not reflection. The light source is interior. There's a shape behind the glass, not clear enough to identify, possibly a lamp, possibly something else. But something was on or active in that room at the time this photograph was taken. Someone was inside this building when this photograph was made. The mark on the lower left. I've been examining it for the last hour under different light conditions. Lamp at high angle, lamp at low angle, flashlight held against the surface at a near horizontal angle. Here's what I can say with confidence. The mark is not on the surface of the photograph in the sense of something applied afterward. It's in the surface, pressed, or part of the printing process, or both. The photographic paper itself has been altered at this point. The mark has depth that a surface smudge wouldn't have. The shape is a crescent, a simple crescent, perhaps half an inch wide, curved. The interior of the crescent is slightly more compressed than the surrounding paper, as though something was pressed against the back of the photograph at this point, pushing through. The crescent opens to the right, the curve faces left, the open ends point right. One crescent, lower left quadrant of the image. I've been trying to determine when it was made. The photographic paper at the mark has the same aging characteristics as the surrounding area. The slight yellowing, the micro-texture of old print stock. The mark wasn't made recently. It was made at or close to the time the photograph was printed, or at a point far enough in the past that the paper has aged uniformly across the surface. Someone put this mark here deliberately, and did it long enough ago that the paper has aged around it. Why a crescent? I want to work through what I know about the other materials and whether crescents appear elsewhere. The ledger. I've been through approximately the first 100 pages in detail. I'm going to go through it again tonight, specifically looking for crescent symbols rather than reading entries. This is a different kind of examination, and I should have done it sooner. Page 23. In the margin of the left column, small, faint, pressed rather than drawn, the same technique as the photograph's mark. A crescent, same orientation, curve facing left, open ends pointing right. page 23 is in the middle of a cluster of entries I estimated as 1940s. The crescent is beside an entry whose date range falls at the beginning of that cluster. The name in the entry is partially obscured by the margin mark. I can read the surname, which is listed as Ashworth, and the first initial, which is C. Ashworth. I couldn't tell you why this name has a crescent beside it, and the surrounding names don't. I spent time with the Ashworth entry looking for what distinguishes it from its neighbors. The date range is unremarkable, consistent with the surrounding cluster. The notation in the right column is one I've seen elsewhere in the ledger, withdrawn. Same word used in the page 12 cluster I documented in the first session. But the entries on page 12 that use withdrawn don't have crescent marks. Ashworth's does. Either the crescent isn't about the withdrawal notation, or Ashworth's withdrawal was different from the others in some way the ledger doesn't make visible. The other thing I noticed about the Ashworth entry, the handwriting. The name and date range are in one of the two contributor hands I identified, the later contributor, the one with the looser letter forms that begins around page 19. But the withdrawn notation in the right column is in a third hand, compact, upright, not matching either primary contributor. Someone else entered Ashworth's status, after the fact, or from a different location, or both. 3 hands in the ledger. I'd only identified 2 until now. There's a third contributor who appears to have added specific notations without entering full records. The withdrawn notation on the Ashworth entry is the only instance I've found so far, but I haven't been looking for this pattern. I'll need to go back through the ledger looking specifically at right column notations and checking for handwriting variation. Continuing. Page 51. Another crescent, same technique, same orientation. This one is in the right column margin, beside the notation column rather than the name column. The notation it's adjacent to is one of the ones that has been struck through, partially in this case, so I can see ref BOF 47 beneath the strike through. Reference 47. The crescent is beside a notation referencing 47. Page 51 is near the gap I documented on page 31, the 6 missing lines. It's downstream of the gap by approximately 20 pages. I'm going to keep moving. Page 79. A crescent, this time larger than the others. Same technique. This one is on the page with O'Connor's entry, the irregular entry I documented in session 1. The crescent is in the upper margin, above the entry block rather than beside any single entry, above O'Connor's entry, as though it's marking the entry itself, not a specific field within it. 3 crescents in the ledger, 1 on the photograph, 4 total. Here's what I want to document before I move to the next part of tonight's examination. Someone made all 4 of these marks. The technique is consistent, pressed into the surface rather than drawn on it, same orientation, similar scale. One person made all 4 marks, or one person made 1 and another followed the same method precisely. These aren't random. The locations are specific. On the photograph, lower left. Beside the building's entrance. In the ledger, beside C. Ashworth's entry. Beside the ref 47 notation. Above O'Connor's entry. 3 of the 4 archival items on this desk are marked. The cassette tape is the only one I haven't examined for this kind of mark. I'm going to check it now. The cassette case, I'm looking at both sides under the low lamp angle. The case itself is smooth plastic, no impression marks possible. The tape reel housing inside, I can see part of it through the case window. No marks visible on the accessible surfaces. But the paper backing inside the case. Cassette tapes have a small paper liner, printed material, usually technical specifications or a manufacturer label. This one has a liner, and the liner has been removed from its original position and replaced facing inward. I can see the reverse of the liner through the case window, blank white paper. That's not the manufacturer side. The liner is reversed. Someone opened this case and replaced the liner facing the wrong direction. I'm opening the case. The liner on its face side, the side that was hidden against the case interior, has a crescent mark. Same technique, same orientation. And beneath the crescent, in very small writing in ink that has partially bled into the paper, 2 characters. I can read them. R and D. RD. I don't know what those initials mean. They're the first instance I've found of what might be a signature or attribution. Someone marked all 4 of these items and left their initials on one of them. RD. Made these marks. RD was here before me, moving through the same materials, leaving the same symbol. I need to think through what the crescent is doing, what it marks, and whether the orientation means anything. All 4 crescents curve left, open right. Consistent. I've been treating this as style, but I want to test whether it's direction. In the ledger, the 3 crescents appear at pages 23, 51, and 79. If I hold the ledger flat and follow the marks in page order, they move from front to back. They advance. They don't double back. Each one is further into the document than the last. The crescent at page 23 is the earliest. The crescent at page 79, beside O'Connor, is the latest. O'Connor's entry is out of chronological order in the ledger. It's placed on page 67 when its date range puts it in the early 1920s, which should be near the front. But it's on page 67, and the crescent is above it on page 79, the furthest into the ledger of the 3 marks. RD marked O'Connor last, or marked him most prominently. The scale of that crescent is larger than the others, pressed deeper. O'Connor is the endpoint of RD's trail through the ledger. The photograph's crescent is at the lower left, building entrance. If the ledger marks point toward O'Connor, and O'Connor's entry has a notation reading "See cross-reference" pointing nowhere, and the address 47 Marginal Road appears on the photograph whose crescent is at the entrance, then RD's trail starts in the ledger with Ashworth, passes through the Ref 47 notation, lands on O'Connor, and exits through the building's front door. That's a path. RD left a path. I don't know how long ago. I don't know if RD finished walking it. The photograph again. I've returned to it with all of this in mind, and I want to document one final observation. The lit window on the 2nd floor, 3rd from the left. I looked at it in detail earlier and noted a shape behind the glass. I've been back at the magnifying glass for the last 15 minutes. The shape behind the window isn't a lamp. It has an outline that suggests a person, or the shadow of a person. Someone standing at the window at the moment this photograph was taken, looking out. At the right angle, through the low-resolution grain of an old print, the outline of a shoulder and the suggestion of a head are visible. I cannot confirm this is a person. The resolution doesn't support certainty. What I can say is that the shape is there. It was there when this photograph was taken. Someone was in the building at 47 Marginal Road when this photograph was made, standing at the 2nd floor window, 3rd from the left, and whoever took the photograph either didn't notice or didn't choose to mention it. The 2nd floor, 3rd window. I want to hold that as a specific detail rather than a vague one. If 47 Marginal Road is a real building, and the evidence from the ledger, the tape, and the photograph's inscription increasingly suggests it is, then that window corresponds to a specific room. A room that was occupied at a specific time by someone who may or may not have been aware they were being photographed. If RD took this photograph, then RD was standing on the street. The person at the window was inside. 2 people, 1 building, 1 photograph, and RD left a crescent at the entrance, not at the window, at the door. RD was pointing at where to go in, not at who was inside. That's a specific navigational choice. RD knew about the person at the window and directed attention to the entrance anyway. The crescent on the photograph is at the entrance. The shape in the window is on the 2nd floor. Both marks point to the same building. I'm going to go to 47 Marginal Road. That's the conclusion I've reached after 3 sessions with these materials. The ledger points there, the tape points there. RD's trail through the crescent marks points there. The building exists or existed was in use until, and there's a key in my pocket labeled 47 and a photograph of a building at that address with a shape in the second floor window that may be a person. I'm going to go there and document what I find. That's the only logical next step, and I've been aware of it since the first session. I've been working through the desk materials first because walking into a building without understanding what you're walking toward is how you miss things. Now I understand more than I did. Not enough. I don't know who RD is. I don't know what O'Connor's cross-reference was pointing toward. I don't know if the building is currently accessible, but enough to go. The key is in my pocket. The crescent marks point to the entrance. I'll document the visit in the next recording.